Warnings now at the top of the video. This video will contain a lot of spoilers for the new Star Wars film, The Last Jedi. So if you have not seen the film, or you don't care about spoilers, even so, go away, watch the film, come back, then watch this video, because we're going to get into a lot of in-depth discussions in this video. This is the official spoiler warning. After this, let's get into it. So I guess one of the initial questions that I first had when leaving the cinema, and I think it's still on a lot of people's minds, is still, at the end of this film, who the hell is Snoke? Okay, it doesn't necessarily matter now, because his death scene in this film was awesome. It showed a complete change in the balance of power for Kylo Ren and what his choices were, and that was great. So, okay, we don't have Snoke in the mix anymore. That still doesn't answer the question of A, who he was, B, how he got to where he was, and C, how he became so powerful in the Force that he could bridge two people who are Force sensitive, bridge their minds from entirely different places. But on that note, seeing the progression of the Force powers of Kylo Ren and Rey, and their ability to communicate to each other, and their progression of discovering new powers, and their way of both not really knowing how to use them, or what's happening, or how to control what's happening. I enjoyed seeing that, because that is how people would probably react to having these discoveries about what it is they can do. It makes me think, how expansive are these Force powers going to get in the next film? What is the new generation of Force powers really going to involve? Of course, that ultimately made sense when Snoke revealed that it was him that was bridging their minds together, and it wasn't really something that they were doing themselves, even though there is a hint of them being able to do that at the end of the film, and it harks back, again, in its writing, to Empire Strikes Back at the end, where Darth Vader is communicating with Luke as Luke is going away on the Millennium Falcon. And I liked that that's a little bit of a hark back to Empire, in the sense that the dark side and the light are communicating, that they are bound together by the Force. But ultimately it leaves you with the question of how much is that going to affect the balance of power in future, with Kylo Ren now essentially leading the First Order. And following on from that, Luke Skywalker mentions at one point that when Kylo Ren rejected his teachings and brought the building down and left with a handful of his students after killing the rest of them, that to me sounds like the basis of the formation of the Knights of Ren, which were mentioned in The Force Awakens. And we haven't seen a whole lot of that, and I think that might be something that becomes a lot more significant in Episode 9, with the rise of the Knights of Ren, and maybe they're going to be the basis of what Kylo Ren now uses as his main enforcers of the First Order. I didn't want to say it in my spoiler-free video, because some of what's involved with her character is a little bit spoilery, but Carrie Fisher was amazing in this film. She completely embodied leadership. She completely embodied everything that we've come to know and love about her character. I thought that the point that she used Force powers to pull herself back onto the ship was interesting to see. I don't know if that was used intentionally to show that she is strong in the Force like her brother is, but in the moment of crisis, yeah, it kind of makes sense that she would dig deep and do something to save herself. I kind of like that they kept, up until this point, Leia and her Force sensitivity as being more of an empathic use of the Force, so she knows what people are feeling around her. She uses it to make judgment calls rather than having it as a physical attribute. But seeing her use that was interesting. Again, I don't know if it needed to be included. Obviously, a lot of this was shot prior to the death of Carrie Fisher, and having it wedged in there as that being how she left the series would probably have changed the whole of the rest of the story for no reason at all. Now, one of the other questions that we sort of get resolved in this film is the question of Rey's lineage, and Kylo Ren at one point is holding her parents' identity over her as if to like tempt her with it. But he says that she knows already who they are and that they are of no importance. Ultimately, he reveals that her lineage is nothing. She's come from nothing. She lived on Jakku with nothing. And I feel, to an extent, that this is either like being fed a red herring and that actually there is still going to be a big reveal, but also, if that does stay true, that her lineage is of no real importance, that she's not really come from anything significant, that also, in a way, harks back to the origins of Luke Skywalker, being just a farmhand on Tatooine, not really coming from anything significant initially in the first film. But obviously, the longer that something that goes on, the more significance it seems to hold, and it makes me think that there might be something more to do with it in the third film that they're not initially hinting at with this film, and they want to leave that for a bigger reveal. And lastly, the big spoiler of the film. If you've watched this video through to this point and you haven't yet seen the film, this is the big spoiler of the film. The death of Luke Skywalker in this film was handled so well that, as sad as it was to see happen, ultimately it's handled in such a way that you almost come to terms with it straight away. Luke Skywalker has been out of the loop of using the Force and being a part of the Force for so long that to use so much of his efforts to fight Kylo Ren on a different planet with a Force image of himself just completely drains him and takes everything he has out of him. He has this beautiful moment where he comes to peace with himself and his balance and his place in the Force, and he just vanishes like Yoda did and like Obi-Wan did before him. And it's this fantastic moment of him becoming one with the Force that you almost go, he didn't go out in any other way than what would have been the perfect way for Luke Skywalker to leave the franchise. And I don't even know if he's going to be leaving the franchise, because ultimately all that means is that he has ascended to a higher power in the Force, and he may still be around in the next film to train Rey further. So ultimately, The Last Jedi leaves you with as many questions as The Force Awakens did, but in different instances. Where is the franchise going to go next? What is the new balance of power going to be? How are they going to handle the exit of certain characters from this film? I've got to say that the few points that really dragged the film down for me that I can say in this spoiler review is the Finn and Rose storyline. I think that was really the only story strand that I kind of thought it could have done without a majority of. But other than that one strand, I think everything else held a lot of significance in this film. As I said with my spoiler-free review, I gave a tentative score for The Last Jedi, and after explaining some of my rationality behind this, I can safely say that I do think Star Wars: The Last Jedi is a 4-star film. And ultimately, it's not necessarily the film everyone thought they were going to be getting, but it is a great installment in the franchise. Again, it doesn't leave you with the same initial feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment that The Force Awakens did, of having that nostalgia hype pay off. This is ultimately something that is a new development for the franchise. There has to be a certain involvement of new progressions and new developments throughout the film that mean the third film can be what it is intending to be. What that is at the moment, none of us know. And ultimately, all we can do is sit and wait patiently, which is going to be the hardest task of all. So now that my spoiler review is done with, we can officially talk major spoilers. So Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Have you seen it? What were the biggest spoilers for you? Where do you think the franchise is going to go after this point? Who do you think Snoke is? Because this is starting to really get to me now. All comments are welcome in the comment section below. Let's talk nerdy and spoilery this time. As always, if you've liked what you've seen here and you want to see more in the future, you can click right here to subscribe and see more videos in the future. And until that point, may the Force be with you.